Vibes. Vibes only.
It's Tuesday. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are back with the Hurdle, episode number 61 here on the Player Profiler YouTube channel, as well as simulcasting on the Executives of Fantasy Football YouTube channel, where we will be live again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We appreciate you guys for tuning in, tapping in. Please click that like button as you do enter and click subscribe so you know where you can find your boys at Matty Kiwoom on the right side, at Cody Carpentier on the left. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the AFC team needs, draft needs for the 2024 NFL draft for, it says the AFC, but it's going to be the AFC North. It's going to be the AFC North and the AFC South. And we will be breaking those down. And the next week, we'll probably be back with the rest of the AFC. And then the preceding weeks, the NFC on Tuesday nights. Wednesday nights are more fantasy focused, but we're going to be doing NFL draft conversations tonight. Matty Kiwoom, how was your Monday and Tuesday?
Pretty good. Cannot complain. Spent the most of today driving through Connecticut. And as most people know, Connecticut is the place you stop between the Northeast and New York. But I was doing work there, so I spent quite a bit of my day there. Not as bad as people say. It's not as bad as people say.
That's the one that the speed limit, I think, goes from 70 to 35. It's within 2 minutes.
And them cops be looking for you to slip up, my friend. My father does, he travels around this area too, so he's always telling me, hey, if you're going through Connecticut, be on the lookout because you'll go from 65 to 45 like that. And if you get caught at 55, whoop, 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 you get pulled over. And in Connecticut, there's really no real decals in their state police. It's like a gray. So they can be on the sneak tip. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's one that I came up there for the first time ever. I think it was 2 years ago with Frank from Player Profile. We went to go see Matt, and I was driving, and all of a sudden it just was the scenery changed and the miles per hour, and I was like, whoa, what is this? What is this shit? We're coming out of here from Jersey. And but anyway, we're back. AFC North, AFC South. We're going to talk about team needs. We've seen free agency go through. It's now April 2nd, so we're a mere, I think it's 23 days from the NFL draft, so just about 3 weeks. And, brother, it is coming quick. And I always feel at this time of year, I just did a show earlier with Theo, and I was saying the same thing. It's like as soon as April clicks on the calendar, I'm like, fuck. And it's bang. It's coming quick. So we got to get here. We got to get done. We got to get in. We got to get out. We got to get back to that work. So let's start tonight with the AFC North. And we're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, who are drafting 18th in the 2024 NFL Draft. Cincinnati Bengals, some of the team needs that they currently face are the tight end position, which we've mocked to them a ton over the course of the last couple of weeks, as well as a tackle position. The tackle position, of course, they went and signed Trent Brown from the New England Patriots. They also signed Mike Gesicki from the New England Patriots to play tight end, and they brought in Zach Moss, the running back position, after allowing Joe Mixon to walk in free agency. They added Sheldon Rankins at the defensive tackle position. At the back end, they re-signed Von Bell, and they brought back Von Bell, and they signed Geno Stone from the Baltimore Ravens. Mm-hmm. There's a few other spots of needs on this defense, but where are you looking directly for the Cincinnati Bengals and some of the needs that they need to fill during the 2024 NFL Draft?
I still think they should be addressing their offensive line. I know they've got two mountains in their tackle, but they have a combined age of 72 years old. So I still think they need to address that line. Even when you look at Ted Karras or Alex Kappa, they're no longer young football players. They're in their second contracts. And at the end of the day, they can keep trying to run from this problem, but eventually it's going to bite them in the ass if it hasn't already. That you just keep picturing the Aaron Donald breaking through that offensive line to cause them to lose the Super Bowl a few years ago. So I still think it's offensive line to me. And with this draft, this class, I felt like it was kind of I don't know if it was the right move to get a guy like Trent Brown, considering the amount of depth in this class where they're drafting at 18. I also want to bring up they could go offensive weaponry. They're known to go receivers early. Now they've lost Tyler Boyd They're facing the loss of T. Higgins potentially this year or definitely next year. So I could see them going wide receiver early as well.
Yeah, they have currently 4 first-round picks on the entire roster, 2 of them being Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Miles Murphy was a first-round pick last year, and Dax Hill, the safety from Michigan, was in 2022. You brought up the skill position. That's one that I'm kind of looking at. I know Bowers has been the mock. I know that there's question about T. Higgins, if he's going to get a contract extension or if he's going to play on the tag, if they're going to trade him. That really is something that they're going to have to figure out, because if not, they're going to need to draft a receiver in this draft. As much as we love Andre Yosevach and Charlie Jones, I mean, look at the guys behind them: Shedrick Jackson, Trenton Irwin, Kwame Lassiter, Kendrick. Like, these guys aren't going to be able to combine for a lick of the talent that T. Higgins does bring to the table. Right. That's also with the departure of Tyler Boyd. They need to bring in some more weapons, as well as that backup tight end position is Drew Sample behind Mike Gesicki. We haven't seen much out of Mike Gesicki the last couple of years. So I do think their biggest need right now is just straight up a weapon. They address the tackle position. They address the defensive tackle position. It's a weapon. I think you bring in a weapon, and that's point blank. I think the best way you could help Joe Burrow at this point, as long as he can be healthy. But I do think the offensive line is also interesting. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers up the street there. They've done a little bit of a revamp this offseason. Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins enter at the wide receiver position. Deontay Johnson departs, as well as Allen Robinson. So Kelvin Austin's currently slated back to his wide receiver 4 position that he stood in last year. The quarterback position, it's a completely new house. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Kyle Allen. At the running back position, they did bring in Cordero Patterson as their projected running back 3 and as kind of a utility weapon type of a guy. On defense, they got Patrick Queen from the Ravens to come over and play inside linebacker. Deshaun Elliott signed at safety from Miami, and Dante Jackson in a trade from the Carolina Panthers at the cornerback position. One position that I'm looking at for this team specifically is still the offensive line, something they did last first round with Broderick Jones. They do have Dan Moore, who they spent a 4th-round pick on in 2021. He was actually one of the top 25 guys that was on the list today of high performance bonus earners from the NFL. That's based on a kind of a pay or a play to get paid type of a deal that Brock Purdy doubled his contract on. Dan Moore was a guy that was on that top 25 list as far as earnings over expectations. So I do think a tackle would be of conversation, as well as kind of the same thing with the Bengals, weaponry. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. They definitely need some weapons, but I think the Steelers are really falling short, and unfortunately, it's kind of the most important spots. It's in the trenches, and it's either pass, catchers or pass stoppers, cornerbacks. They did bring in, like you said, Dante Jackson, but he's not by any means the quality, I'd say, of of a cornerback that they want playing opposite side Joey Porter. And then, of course, Cameron Hayward, Keanu Benton's going to his 3rd year, I think it is. But Cameron Hayward has been playing a long time, and there's not really a lot of depth. But after that, even how do you say it? Ogunjobi, even they need to get some a little spark into their defensive line. But if you're asking me right now where they should be going in round 1, I'm going to be selfish, go offense here, and I'm going to go either receiver or lineman. The only reason why I may go receiver is the ability to get an interior lineman in the 2nd and 3rd round. Good ones like Christian Haynes, Zach Frazier. I'm okay with I'd be okay with that as my 2nd and 3rd round targets. Whereas I think at 20, maybe you disagree, but I would say they still have a chance at a top 5 or 6 wide receiver in the class. We all know that this class is schmacking.
The Cleveland Browns do not have a 1st-round pick. They don't pick until 54. So let's talk about the Ravens here for a second. The Ravens pick at 30th overall. And I recently just finished watching, actually, in the last 20 minutes, finished the Eric DaCosta interview at the Penn State.
I'm in the middle of that right now.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Shout out to Kenny Young for the old ice cream toss into the garbage. If you haven't heard that yet, you'll hear it here in a minute when you get done, Matty. But he walked into the office and ended up getting traded. But during the pre-trade situation, he threw the ice cream cone, missed the garbage, got it all over Eric's DaCosta's floor, and it's kind of a funny story. But everyone in the comments was attaching it to Kenny Young. So, anyways, the Ravens. They go out and sign Derrick Henry from the Tennessee Titans. They did bring in Josh Jones from Houston to play a backup tackle position behind Ronnie Stanley, who has dealt with his fair share of injuries. On the defensive side of the football, they didn't really do much. Chris Board and Kadar Hallman, 2 free agents. But if you listened in that interview with DaCosta, he says, we're not a big team that's going to go out there and spend a bunch of money. Yes, we signed Derrick Henry this year, but that's not our MO. What they have done, though, is draft good players. And you want me to list out the first-round picks for this team? It's a lot different than it was a minute ago for the Bengals. They're all starters. Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, Odafe Away, Lamar Jackson, Tyler Linderbaum, Ronnie Stanley, Zay Flowers, and maybe the worst of the bunch, and he's still technically a starter, Rashad Bateman. So that is 8 of 22 as first-round picks, and they have another pick here at pick number 30. And there is some needs here, but this is one thing that Eric DaCosta did talk about in this interview, was we don't always draft for need. We draft the highest player on the board, and that's why they drafted Kyle Hamilton a few years ago, and now Kyle Hamilton is starting. Pick 30 here. They also have a couple of picks later on in the draft, pick 62, pick 93, pick 113 before the top 150. Matty, what do you see the Ravens as a need, or is there anybody that you see? You don't have to jump into a particular player, I guess, but a position that just makes too much sense for the Ravens.
For me, I think just listening to DaCosta, and also remember, the reason why they have 8 guys starting for them in first-round picks is because they're probably the franchise that does this the best. They get good value. As what seems like the entire NFL sours on a guy that we all in the community have been scouting or predicting, and they just keep slipping, and we're saying, why? Baltimore's usually that franchise go, come on, our team. We'll take advantage of this. And I think because of that being their strategy, I think that you see them go tackle in the first round. A name that comes to mind is a Jordan Morgan. They've been listed, they went to his pro day. They had him work individually by themselves to see if he could do some guard work. Because Daniel Falele is a monster, right? But we don't know if he can play. Ronnie Stanley is a monster, but he was splitting time last year. So with the uncertainty at tackles, you don't want to go into the season without some depth, because that winning window stays open if your quarterback stays on his feet. So I do think with the value of that position, you see them go tackle or offensive line here in the first round. And then don't be surprised if they go back to the wide receiver well. I don't know if they use a first-round pick per se, but given the talent in this class, someone like a Malachi Corley, Xavier Legette, those type of names, Brandon Rice would be real sick in terms of a downfield threat to complement Zay Flowers. So, yeah, they need playmakers as well. As we're finding out in the AFC North, there's good offenses, but there's still probably going to be an arms race in the 2024 NFL draft between these division rivals.
One team that did spend a lot of money in free agency and was very, very, very active, the opposite of what the Ravens did, is the Cleveland Browns. They have 5 draft picks currently slated for the 2024 NFL draft. 54th overall in the second round is their first pick, 85th in the third round, pick 156, 206, and 243. So 2 picks in the top 150 is not a good place to be. However, the Browns did trade for Jerry Jeudy to be their wide receiver 3. They brought in a backup left tackle from Minnesota, Hakeem Adeniji. They brought in 2 backup quarterbacks, arguably 2 of the best in all of football, to back up Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley, and they still do have Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the roster. They brought in Naheem Hines and Deontay Foreman at the running back position for insurance on Nick Chubb. Quinton Jefferson, the long-tenured defensive tackle, came over from the Jets in free agency. And then Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush as linebackers to come in and currently slated to start for this Browns defense. This team, I talked about it with Alex a couple weeks ago on the Roster Watch show, feels like it's just about one of the best rosters in football. Very aged, but one of the most talented, one of the most best top to bottom rosters in football. Again, aged. But Matty, when you're looking at it, you only have 5 darts to throw in the draft. Where do you see, or where do you think would be best fitted for Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns staff to utilize these picks?
Given their limited resources in the 24 draft, one thing, one area of need I see them attacking is the trenches on both sides of the ball. Yeah, they've invested in both sides of the football, but when you think about the Browns and how they win, it's by being able to run the football, keeping their quarterback upright because they've always had a good offensive line, and it's putting that pressure on opposing offenses through their defensive line, namely Myles Garrett. So they're going to want to make sure that stays a strength. And given the overall strength of their roster, they could go best player available throughout the draft and be happy. But I think that given the skills the skills of the players in this particular class, you'll see a lot of trench guys probably being their targets. One thing I would like to see them do, and very well could see them doing it, is moving Dorian Thompson Robinson for a 6th. 7th, just get an extra chip there at that poker table in the 24 NFL draft.
That would not hurt anybody. They have 4 quarterbacks, dude. Unless you think Deshaun Watson is going to be deplorable, then you think you need to move in that direction. What is up, Jamie Pirog in the chat? What is up, T-Rock? What is up? He says he's glad we both have Javon Baker higher than his 403 ADP and far lower on McConkey, or higher on Ray Davis and Ben Sinat. T-Rock, appreciate you hopping in the chat. Everybody else, please click that like button. Please click subscribe. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Let's move on to the AFC South, and we'll start out with the Indianapolis Colts. With the Indianapolis Colts, their first-round picks, Quentin Nelson, Jesus, at guard, Ryan Kelly at center, A-Rich last year, Anthony Richardson, the quarterback. We'll get back from a bum shoulder at the end of last year, and only one first-round pick drafted by Chris Ballard on the defense. That's Kwity Paye, the defensive end. In free agency, didn't do much. Joe Flacco, backup quarterback. Raekwon Davis comes up from the Miami Dolphins as a backup defensive tackle. When you do look at this roster, feels like they could use, like everybody else, offensive line. They did draft Bernard Raymond from Central Michigan just a few years ago in the 3rd round. Braden Smith and Will Fries on the right side, and Blake Freeland as a backup from BYU. There's guys there. There's younger guys there. But I said this on one of the last shows I just did. I can't remember which one. Too many. You could never have too many offensive linemen. You can never have too many cornerbacks and DBs.
That's right.
This is a team, I think it's O-line or bust.
Yeah, they got to get line to keep the strength of their team going. Plus, they're going to have a very inexperienced quarterback with Anthony Richardson, who's already lost the season due to injury. I know that's not an offensive line problem where he was, rolling out, but still, you want to keep that guy healthy. So trenches, of course, offensive line makes sense. But I also see Chris Ballard going a lot of defense this year because, yeah, they brought back Julian Blackmon. Yes, they brought back Kenny Moore, but they're not that great. They're really not that great. They're okay players. They really could use a true CB1, let Juju Brent settle into that CB2 role and become a really good duo in the NFL. Plus, they're linebackers. They need upgraded at linebackers. I kind of see them coming away with their 1st and 2nd round and being very happy with, let's call it Quinyon Mitchell and Edrin Cooper. Chris Ballard loves those athletes. He loves going with the high power type players. And we heard this at the Combine. One of their biggest losses, believe it or not, was when they lost Ashton Doolin. So that tells me that they're probably not going to attack wide receiver. They just signed Michael Pittman. Josh Downs looked promising. I don't think Alec Pierce is done as an NFL prospect by any means. I think he could still be used in a certain way in this offense with this quarterback. And then you bring back Ashton Doolin healthy. Seems like they have their 4 guys.
What if I told you in round 1, you could, if you are the Indianapolis Colts, you could end up with Terrion Arnold. In round 2, you could end up with a Zach Frazier. And in round 3, you could end up with a Javon Baker. Pretty decent. You get your interior, you get a weapon.
I would hate that for Javon Baker, though.
Alec Pierce isn't good.
Yeah, but that role sucks. That role's a dummy role. The volume
it's good
goes
for the team, though. It would suck for fantasy, but good for the team.
Yeah, great. Yeah, exactly. It'd be great for the team. You want playmakers.
All right. Let's move on to the Houston Texans. They also do not have a draft pick in round 1, just like the Browns. They don't pick until pick 42. However, they do have 3 selections inside the top 100 to the Houston Texans. Houston Texans also had a fantastic draft in 2023, landing not only CJ Stroud and Will Anderson with the first 2 of the first 3 picks in the NFL draft, but also hitting on Tank Dizzy in the 3rd round of last year's draft. This team is rearing after just a year ago, looking like a team that was a couple years away. Guess what? A big quarterback can change that. The other first-round pick they do have on this roster, Derek Stingley from the 2022 class and Titus Howard from the 2019 class, as well as Kenyon Green from 2022. They spent all of their offseason money on defense. They traded for Joe Mixon, but they spent everything up on the defensive line, edge, middle linebacker. They signed 4 cornerbacks, including bringing back Lonnie Johnson. I could name all of them off, but I'm going to be here for 5 minutes. The main ones are Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry, and Folu Futakasi from Jacksonville. And Danico Autry is from Indianapolis. So they brought in 2 interdivisional defensive linemen that have been wreaking havoc on their offensive line. So they addressed some needs, Matty, did Houston. They got their they got their starting running back actually improved, it looks like, from Devin Singletary. And then they addressed the interior need, which is where I plugged them at 42 with Devondre Sweat. They literally added 5 defensive linemen to this room. I'm not sure where to go right now. They added a butt ton of cornerbacks as well. What are you thinking for the Houston Texans?
I think they go receiver now. I thought they were in the great spot with the Browns pick at 23. I thought they were poised to get a top probably 2 defensive interior linemen, either Johnny Newton or if Byron Murphy fell. They were in a great spot for that. They trade out and they use their money, like you mentioned some of the guys they brought in. So I think that they're looking receiver. And I think a lot of people look at that depth chart and think it's better than the team does, if that makes any sense. Where, we see Noah Brown, we see John Metchie go, that's depth. But the Texans might be saying, we have CJ Stroud ready to rock and roll. Tank Dell, Nico Collins is not enough. We saw Tank Dell go down last year. We've seen Nico be a little bit inconsistent throughout his career. Let's get somebody else in that 2nd round. So I think that they're poised for a really fun pick there in day 2.
What if could I interest you in at pick 42, Keon Coleman in round 3, then taking Jatavian Sanders. And in round 4, you just circle back and you get your tackle from Houston, Patrick Paul.
I mean, that's Keon Coleman is the perfect player for that team because the expectations were kind of low. You could build and just kind of keep his route tree simple, keep his role simple, and just build off it and let him make plays. Ooh, I love Keon Coleman there. And Patrick Paul, he's poised, in my opinion, he's going to be one of the best values in the entire draft. His stock keeps falling, and I understand why it's falling, but I don't necessarily agree with it, and I don't think it pans out long term. I think he is a true left tackle, and so to get him in the 4th round, maybe he's not as ceiling is a little more limited than we initially thought, but great player.
The Tennessee Titans feel like they have kind of sat back, slingshot, and they've just been nailing specific things that they need. They need a true receiver 1. DeAndre Hopkins is aging. I think he's still number 1, but Calvin Ridley, I think, brings that to the table. They can alter games, right? These guys maybe – I don't think they're going to combine for 16 games per se, but I think they could combine for 16 wide receiver 1 games where it's like this week it's Hopkins, next week it's Ridley, back and forth. Nonetheless, Tony Pollard in free agency, they bring him over to pair with Tyjae Spears. Big. Sebastian Joseph Day, he's been one of the most underrated defensive linemen over the course of the last 5-6 years. They also bring in Kenneth Murray, a former first-round pick from the Chargers, Chidobe Awuzie from the Bengals, and, of course, the Super Bowl champion 2-time L'Jarius Sneed, who was always top 15 in my cornerback rankings. I don't know where he was this past year for you, but L'Jarius Sneed's a savage.
Top 12. He was top 12. He was in the top 8 sometimes. He was a stud. No doubter.
He's a complete unit of a cornerback, and I think it fits what this defense needs. Now, what do the Tennessee Titans need? For me, I think we've all talked about it in round one. It's the tackle position, but what about past that? They talked about needing speed on the outside. It sounds like Treylon Burks is not quite there. I think I lean tackle. I think I lean receiver. We've talked about both of those positions a lot today. I also think the nose tackle position is an open door as well. What do you think?
I also think that you'll see them address corner, maybe in rounds 3 or 4. They're not as desperate for a immediate impact player at that position after getting Snead and also bringing Awuzie. So I don't see, but I do think that they will be targeting it. They do want some youth and keep throwing some darts up against the wall for that position. And then edge, interior, like you said, you can't have enough edge rushers, so they'll definitely dabble in that arena. But in terms of the big building blocks that they're going to be looking to get in this draft, it's offensive line and then receiver, because it looks like a strength, but they're both older. Both Ridley and D-Hop are older, and it's a very fragile room. And their winning window, they'll know for sure if it's open for 3 or 5 years, if Will Levis is the real deal. If they can't protect him and he kind of falters, then they're back down to square one, which is not where they want to be.
I think that's a big point you made there at the receiver position, is that they feel good about this top end as far as Hopkins and Ridley go. They obviously do not feel good about Treylon Burks based on what Callahan had to say. Mm-hmm. But if you do look at the rest of this roster, it's like college free agent, college free agent, college free agent, college free agent. Kyle Phillips, who was pre-Ran Carthon, and Colton Dowell, who is the only wide receiver that was drafted by Ran Carthon last year in the 7th round. So they need to bring somebody in here in the first few rounds that maybe is going to have some willpower to stay on the roster. We'll see what happens. So like you mentioned, Will Levis is kind of the linchpin to this whole team's success. Now, on to the last team of the evening. Again, we appreciate you guys tuning in, tapping in. Calvin Ridley's former team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they always spend a little bit of money in free agency. Went out and traded for Mac Jones from the New England Patriots. They go and sign Mitch Morse from the Buffalo Bills. A big need on the interior there. At the wide receiver position, Devin Duvernay from Baltimore, and Gabe Davis was the big pony this year at the wide receiver position from Buffalo. On defense, on the interior, Eric Armstead, maybe one of my favorite signings of the entire offseason. Eric Armstead coming over from San Francisco. On the defensive back position, Travis Gibson from Tennessee, Darnell Savage from Green Bay, and Ronald Darby from Baltimore. I still think they go interior. They need interior help. But when you look at the wide receiver room, it could fall off quick, and that does not give Trevor Lawrence any favors. What do you think?
They need to attack wide receiver and cornerback in my position. The pass catchers and the pass break-uppers, the guys who stop the pass, is what I'm saying here, because they lost Darius Williams. Tyson Campbell, I think, is a bit overrated. At least he was last year. And then, of course, they brought in Ronald Darby, but Ronald Darby, he's a vet. He's a presence. He's not necessarily the playmaker that they're losing in Darius Williams, who had a really good 2023. So, yeah, they definitely need offensive line. A lot of teams do. They invested a little bit with their paper, a little bit older players, so maybe they can delay attacking that in the draft a year. But in terms of early round draft picks, you got to attack pass catchers and the cornerbacks. That's what they need to do, especially in this division that's poising to be a low-key shootout division with 4 potentially above average to really good quarterbacks.
I like it. All right. That is the AFC North and the AFC South. We are the Executives. You can find us over at the Executives of Fantasy Football YouTube channel. You can also find us over at thedraftrankings.com and the Draft Rankings on YouTube. We're dropping 3 podcasts a week over at the Draft Rankings on YouTube, and you can also get that anywhere you listen to podcasts. We appreciate you. We love you. We thank you for tuning in and tapping into our shows every Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, left, right, up, down, square, circle, triangle. I'm Cody Carpentier. He's Matty Kiwoom. We'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Executives of Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Till then, we'll see you.
Peace.